Hi, welcome to my third lecture on the French defense. The French defense starts out e4, e6, d4, and d5, and I've already covered the exchange variation where white plays that move, and the advanced variation where white plays that move. Now I'm going to discuss this move, knight to d2. Basically, this is called the Tarrasch, and I'm pretty sure it's the most popular move currently. Not to say historically, but I'm pretty sure currently with current masters. If you don't know, if black now takes his pawn, obviously white will just recapture, and this pawn structure is more favorable for white, theoretically. Black's pawn is still on e6, and the bishop is still hemmed in. And white has better central control and the centralized knight. But basically what's happening is white plans to support or defend d4 by playing c3. Now it does sort of trap in this bishop a little bit in the opening, but as we'll see, the knight will just move away. So the most common, there's sort of two common continuations for the Tarrasch, and there's many different lines. I'm only going to cover really two and then some general moves, so this is by no means an exhaustive analysis of the French defense. So black usually plays this move, knight to f6 or c5. So let's cover knight to f6 first. It's the most popular, and to me pretty much the most straightforward of the two. So black plays knight f6, and now white will advance the pawn. But notice, unlike the advanced variation where we're giving, we're moving away and black gets the initiative, with this advance we're actually attacking the knight, so we'll retain this initiative. So black will move its knight to d7, where we'll attack the e5 pawn. So if this pawn were to be captured, black could capture this pawn. White will play a bishop to d3, and now black will play c5. Like I said, if it could capture this knight here will just capture on e5. But white will continue with its plan of defending d4 with c3. So c3, knight c6. Whoops, how did that happen? Black just continuing to apply pressure, or attacking, threatening d4, which is, like I said in the first lecture, part of its plan. White will defend the pawn again with knight to e2, and now black will just trade off the pawns. Okay, and then black will now attack the e-pawn by playing f6. And my first lecture I actually recommended this move only after you castle, but in this case I'm going to recommend this is the common move. But just want to let you know there's a weakness in this move. This is the reason why. It opens up this line to the king. So the king is more exposed to attack now. If the king were castled and sitting on this square, it wouldn't have this problem. This is the reason why I recommend only playing f6 after you've castled, but this is the typical continuation. And just so you know, the queen can move over here and attack, possibly. If white plays f6, white will play, captures, the knight will recapture, and now this knight on d2 will come over to f3, defending the d-pawn. Black will play bishop to d6, then both sides will castle, and that's where I'll end this analysis for this line of the Tarrasch. So let's back up. Oops, a little too far. So, like I said, we just covered the line where black plays knight to f6. Now let's cover the line where plays c5 right away. So c5, and then white has a couple options. It could play, the line I'm going to show you is where white captures here. The other move you could do is playing knight to f3. Like I said, there's many different lines, but let's capture this pawn. Black will recapture. Then we'll move our knight out. Then black will sort of continue with its plan. Black has, if you notice, black always seems to have, with the French defense, you can almost see how black always has this plan. It's very natural. And sometimes from white's perspective, we have to sort of come up with our plan, or it isn't as obvious as black's. Black's just going to play c6, once again hitting d4. Now white will actually pin the knight to the king by playing bishop to b5. Black's going to play bishop to d6, and then now white's going to take this pawn. This does two things. One, it's going to give black an isolated pawn right here, which will have to be defended by pieces, become subject to attack by white. The other thing it does is black just moved this bishop and it's going to be forced to move it again. So definitely now white will be sort of in control of the game, which it sort of already was, but now definitely it will be. Now white will castle. Notice that it's threatening to bring, whoops, its rook over to e1, hitting the king. So black will play knight to e7, blocking, preventing any type of check. White will play knight to b3, hitting the bishop. The bishop will move back. White will move its rook over, and then black will castle. That's where I'll end this line. So now let me back up. That was the Tarrasch. So now let's go into the classical line. So the classical line is where we play knight to c3. Just to go to my notes. So here's the main line, or what we call maybe the main line. I've already covered the exchange, the advance, the Tarrasch. The main line here, knight to c3. And now there's three basic continuations by black. Bishop to b4, which is called the Winnower variation, or hopefully that's how you pronounce it. Knight to f6, which is called the classical variation. And d takes e4, which is called the Rubenstein variation. Let me just cover all these briefly. So let me start with the Rubenstein variation, which is just black takes, and then the knight retakes. And like I said before, this is actually better for white because the pawn is still on e6, blocking in the bishop. White has more central control, and the knight is centralized. So actually now black will play its knight to d7. The idea is to play this knight here next move. White will play knight f3, developing, protecting the pawn. Black continues with its plan. White will take. Black will retake. White plays the bishop to d3, which is sort of a possible move that I covered before in the French defense. And now, technically, the other possible move in this situation is the bishop here. Sort of we've seen this idea before. But here, black plays c5, and then basically white takes, black takes. That's an example of the Rubenstein variation. And I'm going to have to continue this lecture on the next